Hi, I'm Caliban. Welcome to episode 2 of Bar for Beginners. As the title implies, this video is part of a series, so if you're new here, you'll probably want to start off with the first video that should be linked on the screen right now and available in the description. In the first episode, we looked at the core game and the key components to building a base and creating an army. Today we're going to do something a bit different and talk about efficiency. Efficiency is absolutely mission critical to high performance in Bar. No matter what sort of match you're playing or what your particular role in that match is, efficiency is power, and it's simply something that cannot be ignored. You might have a brilliant strategy, great multitasking ability or Korean level APM, but none of that will count for anything if your opponent steamrolls straight through your base with an army twice the size of yours. I'm going to talk about 4 different types of efficiency. They do have some overlap, but I think it's worth discussing them separately. I want you to understand the kind of things that you should have at the forefront of your mind when you're making decisions within the game. Before we do that though, we're going to check out the first few minutes of a couple of replays to demonstrate our point. Okay, so this is just a basic skirmish against an inactive AI. Let's put the speed up a little bit, turn the music off.
Battle started.
Now, within this game, we're going to do a few things. First of all, we're going to use solar collectors instead of windmills, just because I don't want the wind speed to be a factor when we're comparing 2 different games. The second thing is, our commander's not going to play a huge part. He's going to do the basics of base building, then he's going to run down to here, here, here and here, gather all the metal, then he's going to build a couple of laser towers and a radar dish here, and then he's going to stay there and just imagine that, he's busy. So let's clear that rubbish off and let's have a look. So if we pause it here, we can see our commander's first created 3 solar collectors, 3 metal extractors, started his bot lab, and now he's off down to build his next metal extractor. And the bot lab's going to crank out a couple of grunts before anything else, just to give us a bit of protection against enemy scouts. So let's resume. So we're about 2 minutes into the game and we've just got our first construction bot about to come out. So let's speed it up until he does. Okay, the bot's out. Now the bot's going to go and build a construction turret because we know these are awesome and we want more build power. At the same time, we're going to keep cranking out thugs because we want an army. So let's fast forward again. At this stage, our commander's pretty much done most of his job. He's just building his last metal extractor, then he's got his 2 laser turrets and his radar to put up. And then we're just going to leave him there and ignore him. Back at our base, we're just finishing up our construction turret, and we've still got some thugs coming out. And now our construction bot's going to go and build some energy because we've seen, hey, we've got no energy. Notice though, the construction turret is only putting out little bits of blue goo there, and therefore, or nanites, I don't know, whatever that is. But he's not going at full power. We just simply don't have the economy to support him properly. So as we come up to the 6-minute mark, we're going to pause it. What are we? 5:55-ish. So I'll wait for the next few things to happen. Commander's not doing anything over here. So 6 minutes in, let's hit the pause button and see what we've got. So within 6 minutes, without worrying about wind speed as a factor and taking these metal spots here, ignoring everything else, we've got ourselves 5 solar collectors with a 6th one halfway done. And then in this little patch here, we've got ourselves 8 grunts completed. 8 thugs completed and a couple of grunts. Okay, well, everything looks fine, but let's re-examine this on a different replay. So we'll go back to the lobby and then we'll load up a second replay. Okay, so exactly the same as last time. We're going to spawn in, do the same stuff, but slightly differently. Obviously the AI is still inactive, so we don't have to worry about that, and we're using solar collectors rather than windmills, so we don't have to worry about the wind speed. Okay, so we're going to open up just like we did before, although the only difference here is, rather than going straight to build our 3rd metal extractor, as it requires a bit of a walk and we've got plenty of resources, we're going to get the bot lab app first. So the bot lab comes out. We're going to start exactly the same before with a couple of grunts, and our commander's going to build that, but unlike before, he's going to skip a solar collector, just because we've got plenty of energy, and the commander's not doing anything at the moment. He's spending most of his time walking, so we don't need the extra energy right now. So let's resume speed that up a little bit. Okay, so we've got our 2 grunts out, so now we're going to work on our construction bot. And the commander's carrying on with what he was doing before. Although we now notice that our energy is actually pretty low, and the second the commander starts to do something, we're going to run out. So what we're going to do instead is build a solar collector here. Now, it doesn't matter that it's not in our base. We want to protect this area anyway, because that's where one of our metal nodes is. And it won't matter if it gets killed later in the game. So we'll just pop that there to give us a bit of extra energy. After that, the commander's going to do exactly what he was doing before. Back at our base, rather than build a construction turret, because we don't really have the economy to support it quite yet, we're going to instead get our 1 construction bot to worry about solar collecting. We're still pumping out thugs because we want a small army. Let's speed this up a bit. Okay, so now we're actually getting a second construction bot out. That's going to help our first construction bot get these solar collectors up quicker. And then what it's going to do is now build the construction turret a bit later on. Not much, but just a little bit later. As we speed through again, we'll watch the construction turret come up. We've still got plenty of both resources, so our second construction bot's going to actually help finish that off to get it done quickly. And then after that, the bot's going to go and start on our solar collectors like we were going to do before. But we have noticed we're actually wasting a bit of energy here, so our second construction bot is going to come through, and after he builds a solar collector, he's going to think, hey, I've got too much, so we're going to put down a single energy converter instead. Now, it's not a huge amount, but it does mean we can convert 70 of that excess energy that we're not using into 1 metal. And considering we were only bringing 16, going to 17 is not too bad. At the same time, we're going to crank out grunts. And then we're just going to continue putting solar collectors up. Our commander is just waiting there as before. He's done exactly the same, apart from building 1 extra solar collector on the way, because he could, and we needed it. Now, as we come up to the 6-minute mark again, what we're going to do is pause the game and just see what's different. So we had exactly the same amount of time, we had exactly the same amount of pressure from the enemy, i.e. none, and we had exactly the same energy income in the fact that we didn't have to worry about wind speed. And we've got the same amount of metal nodes too, but look at the difference. Before we had 5 solar collectors, now we've got 9 solar collectors if you include the one under construction, and a 10th one down here. Also, before we had 8 thugs. Well, if we double click these to look, we've got 14 thugs this time. And we've all still got our construction turret, but we've got the benefit of an extra construction bot and an energy converter. And that's all within the first 6 minutes of the game. So what we've just looked at is the first of our efficiencies, economics. This involves careful balance of our 3 resources: metal, energy, and of course build power. The most simple part of this is to ensure that our resource storage is never full, as everything above that will be wasted. This is important even in team games, as although excess is shared, your teammates might not have the ability to use that overflow. The best way of avoiding this problem is to have enough constructors on the field to use those resources to create something that you need. It's worth remembering that not every unit and building requires the same ratio of metal to energy. This is obvious with some things. Solar collectors require no energy, and energy converters require no metal, but the differences with the units themselves can be quite pronounced. The Hound, in all its glory, requires 300 metal and 6,300 energy, which with a bit of maths tells us it's a 1 to 21 ratio. At 400 each, the Recluse does require more metal, but it requires significantly less energy, about a 1 to 11 ratio. What does this tell us? If you are struggling for metal but have lots of energy, then the Hound is probably the unit for you. If the opposite is true and you find yourself energy starved, then building the Recluse is going to be far more suitable for the immediate capabilities of your economy. The other side to this coin is to avoid overspend. If one of our resource bars is empty and we have a large deficit, then we're going to run into some problems. The creation of units and buildings will slow to a crawl, which should be of great concern, as if we didn't need those things in the very near future, then we wouldn't be building them in the first place. Secondly, a large deficit with one resource normally creates a bottleneck that causes the spending of the other resource to slow, often leading to full storage and, again, wastage. There are a couple of ways we can address this. The immediate way is to rethink your priorities, perhaps switching your production queues to create things that are better suited to the state of your economy. Just like we said earlier, if you're building hounds but you've got hardly any energy, maybe switch to building recluses instead. Recluses? Reclusi? Recluses? Recluses. We'll go with recluses. The better way, which requires a bit of foresight, is to think more carefully about the amount of build power that we want to create. There is no point having 10 construction turrets in your base if your income only allows you to support 3 or 4 at once. It would have been much better to build half as many turrets, and instead use the resources and build power that we put into those surplus turrets to create more energy generation and conversion, or perhaps more combat units, and then use those to capture and defend additional metal spots. This segues neatly into our second area of efficiency, return on investment. Simply put, you want to get the most out of the least. You should be doing the things that best accomplish your goals in the cheapest way possible. You need to be objective oriented. Don't get in the habit of building random things because you suddenly notice that you have a factory or a construction unit sitting idle. Take a second and think about what you need now and in the near future. Your goals don't have to be complex. They could be as basic as, my army is small, I need more units. If you were running an energy deficit and then someone paused the game and said to you, hey, what are your immediate goals? I doubt one of those goals would be, I want more energy converters. However, it's quite typical to see a new player send a couple of construction bots out to constantly build energy converters, even when they don't have enough power available to run the ones they've already got. Aside from the fact that those 2 construction bots could be building something that delivers a better return, such as maybe more generation, it costs 80 energy a second for 2 bots to build a converter, and that's 80 energy you probably don't have. You see, Bar has a habit of making you feel like you should build stuff now because you know that you'll need it in the future. But if you don't carefully manage the now, then that future will never arrive. In this skirmish, Blue's pushed the front line out to here and here. He's holding the north with his commander and a couple of units, and the south with a load of T1 bots. The problem is, Red keeps sneaking small groups of fast units round the sides or sometimes straight through the middle of a battle and attacking Blue's base. You can see the route they're taking, either here, sometimes round here, and sometimes just straight through the middle, ignoring everything there and getting to the base because they're quite fast and they can't be killed off quick enough. Now in the north, Blue's decided to build 2 overwatches to protect this area due to their large radius. The reason that small laser towers weren't used is just simply they're not that powerful, and if you've got a small clump of units they can just run straight past one. They might lose 1 or maybe 2, but they won't actually stop them. The problem is these overwatches are very expensive. If we look, they're 440 metal each and 5,000 energy. And also they require a lot of build time from these 2 construction bots to put up. The other problem with these overwatches is they're static. Once the front line's moved a little bit more, perhaps to this area, those 2 overwatches don't do anything anymore. And really, that's a bit of a waste of resources. If we'd used units instead, then we could have moved units forward, but because the overwatches are static, we don't have that option. However, in the south, it's a very different story. To prevent Red's flanking attacks in the south, Blue's used a small group of peons that's left over from early on in the game. Now at 13 minutes in, peons are pretty weak, so they're not going to really hold up in the front line much, so these were almost free. The only thing that was expensive was a radar tower, and by expensive we mean almost free. So if you think about it, these are 2 different solutions to exactly the same problem. They're both trying to deal with the same threat, which is very small groups of grunts running through the defences. This cost almost 1,000 metal and almost 10,000 energy and a lot of build time. And this cost 60 metal, 630 energy and a few leftover T1 bots that aren't really any use anyway. Both these 2 systems, the towers and the bots and the radar, accomplish exactly the same thing, but the one in the south is having a far higher return on investment than the one on the north. The third efficiency factor I want to touch on is player attention. It's a bit of a meta topic, but I think it's got enough effect on the game that we shouldn't ignore it. In any one game there are always so many things happening at once. You're building your economy, scouting the enemy, trying to secure forward resources, fighting battles, keeping your commander safe, and all those sorts of things. This level of multitasking is difficult, and if you focus on any one area too hard, then something else is going to go wrong somewhere else. Everyone has a different amount of ability in this area, depending on the kind of person that you are and how much experience you've got with real-time strategy games. You've got limits, and although you can improve them with practice, you should not ignore what those limits currently are. This means that you might have to make some sacrifices in some areas to free up your attention span for others. In this replay, I'm juggling a lot of things at once. On the one hand, I'm managing my economy. I'm also protecting the middle of the map so I can keep my geothermal safe and stop the enemy from capturing the other geothermal. I'm trying to attack the bottom where I know there's some lightly defended resource collection, and also attack the top, which I've not seen yet, but I do suspect that there's probably resource collection over there. Now, I have to carefully think about my goals and my attention span. The most important thing for me is the middle. This energy advanced geothermal power plant is providing me a huge amount of my total energy, and the enemy not having theirs is giving me just as much lead in the other direction. So this is my main focus, but I still want to do lots of things. So what I have to do is make a few compromises. I'm using my construction bots to continually build windmills. It's not probably the most efficient placing or space, but it was quick to set up. And exactly the same with my advanced construction bot. I don't know if I'm doing the most efficient thing. I mean, he started down the bottom, so it probably would have been better to get these, but I only had limited attention span. I had to take that into mind, and I just set him doing something that I knew would be good. And then my attack at the bottom, I'm not watching this at all. These hounds are just on an attack order. I'm not even going to look at them to see what happens. They'll probably win, and then they'll probably get killed by something else, but that's fine. I can afford to lose them. And it means I can keep all my main focus in the middle, which is the fight I really want to win. So we'll speed this up a little bit. This gives me plenty of time to manage all of the stuff in the middle of the map. It means I can correctly micro these units to make sure they stay out of the way of the artillery, make sure they nip in to get kills because a lot of stuff's getting repaired, make sure my fat boy's raining enough firepower down on everything. Now it turns out my hounds are doing quite well. They'd probably have done better if I'd microed them. It looks like I definitely lost one or two here, which I probably could have avoided if I just pulled the damaged ones back. I'll probably lose this third one as well. But I had to make some sacrifices. This was less important, so rather than trying to do everything all at once, I focused on my main area and then let the queue up system worry about everything else. Finally, I want to talk about asset management, our fourth and final branch of our efficiency tree. It's all well and good to build great things in the right order, but we must also make careful use of everything that's already on the battlefield. You've probably noticed that your construction bots and vehicles are pretty sluggish, and your commander is even worse. Take that into account when you're placing buildings and try to eliminate as much travel time as possible. This is one of the reasons you see so many compact bases in Bar, as it dramatically reduces the amount of time that your construction units spend crawling around, and it enables your construction turrets to join in. It might feel more vulnerable, but that trade-off is often worth it, especially as it's far easier to defend a small area from intruders than it is a vast town. I know, waves of enemy bombers, nukes and artillery hitting this area will have catastrophic consequences, but let's be honest, if you've got to that point in the game, then you probably lost a while ago and just hadn't realised it yet. Something that shouldn't be neglected is reclaiming and resurrecting. I want you to pay extra attention to all of those trees, rocks and wrecks that you can find littered all over the battlefield. Not every map is covered in vegetation and minerals, but when it is, they can provide a serious boost to your early economy. Let me show you what I mean. In this replay, we're going to look at something a little bit silly. I don't advocate for doing this, but I'm just doing it to try and demonstrate a point. Now, I've built my 3 wind turbines, but instead of doing my normal kind of build, the first thing I'm going to do is get out a Lazarus. These are our reclaim and repair bots for ARM. Our Lazarus is going to start reclaiming trees because it gives us quite a lot of energy. If you look, our bar's going up quite fast. You see here that we're getting 57 energy every second just from this one Lazarus. Our opponent is a barbarian, I think. Yes, some sort of barbarian on hard difficulty. So it should give us something a bit to play against. As usual, the barbarian has got a bot out very quickly and it's going to come and try and annoy me. Let's speed this up. These are annoying, but hey, this happens. Thankfully though, our Lazarus is a repair and reclaim and res bot. So the Lazarus is just going to quickly resurrect these two metal nodes. We've now cranked out a second Lazarus and that's also reclaiming trees. Pop this on 6 speed and just let the game play out a little bit. It's a kind of standard fare for a skirmish at the moment. The barbarian AI is quite good at poking holes in your defence, so it's just sending lots of little bots to try and find gaps to go and kill windmills and constructors and things in. But I've played against these enough, I know generally how to stop it. So I've got a couple of turrets up to gap off one area, and I've got a few light units out just to protect against the others. Note the fact that we're now coming up to 5.5 minutes in the game and I'm still only running on 3 windmills. I do have a Lazarus here gathering trees, I've got another one here gathering trees, and a third one down here, all just completely gathering trees. You'll notice that my energy amounts are actually quite reasonable. As long as the Lazaruses are gathering, then I'm getting quite a lot in, and it's only dipping really low right now because my commander's building an energy storage, which is very expensive on the energy. It should start to creep up now. And we're going to continue to gather trees. Let's fast forward a bit more. So, now we're 8.5 minutes into the game, and I've still not built any more windmills. We've got Lazaruses running around. There's still a few trees on the map, so they're gathering them, and that's keeping our energy income at a reasonable rate. We have started to take the geothermal plant in the middle of the map, though. As we go past the 10-minute mark, we look that our geothermal plant is almost done. Although we're running a little bit low on energy now, as the Lazaruses are having to do a lot of running around. And it's up. 10 minutes into the game and we didn't actually build any energy generation whatsoever after our initial 3. We managed to provide enough energy for our entire economy for 10 minutes just out of trees. I don't advocate for doing this in a game, it's a bit risky, but I just wanted to prove a point. You can see that we actually had plenty of energy for that almost whole time. Now that we've got the geothermal up, our problems are solved and we didn't have to waste all that time building windmills. This means we didn't have to build as many construction bots, and as such our bot lab was free to continue to produce units for us. Okay, I think it's about time to wrap that up for today. We've covered a broad range of efficiency related topics, and although I've left plenty of things out, I think there should be enough there for starters. The examples I've given are limited, but they should help you to start looking at things from an efficiency mindset. Always think before you act. Make sure what you're doing is in line with your goals and check that there isn't a cheaper or quicker way to accomplish the same thing. It takes time to get the hang of this, but once you do start making changes, you'll start to notice that you have more units and more structures faster than you ever did before, and initially you'll probably wonder how it even happened. Watch your replays, especially the losses, and see if you can learn anything from them. Look at what you're doing, look at what your opponent is doing, and try to pick out the differences. Sometimes you'll just get outplayed. That's RTS, that's bar TS. Sometimes you'll get caught off guard with an attack that you weren't expecting. Sometimes your opponent will be able to micromanage their units in such a way that they win an even fight. That can happen. But sometimes many small efficiencies over the course of a game can add up to someone having a significant lead. So, play lots of bar, put these things into practice, and sometimes that person with a significant lead will be you. Hi there, thanks for watching episode 2. Episode 3 will be uploaded sometime in the future when I make it. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video then please click the like button, and if you've got any questions you can join the Discord or leave me a comment. And as usual, if you want more of this sort of thing then subscribe to my channel and I hope to see you back soon.